Welcome to Wednesday in the Word. This is a look through the Bible where we look at each book of the Bible. And this week, perhaps a little bit shorter than a couple weeks before.
Yeah, a couple weeks before.
Was it Chronicles and Kings? There was a lot. But what book we're going to be looking at this week, Philip?
Nehemiah.
Okay, that's a good one.
Nehemiah is a really good book, especially if you're maybe in some sort of leadership role. Maybe if you have people who look up to you. It's a really good book, and it kind of it obviously complements the book of Ezra.
Yep.
Because Ezra, you see the first return, you see the second return, and in Nehemiah, we're going to see the third return. So that's kind of what Nehemiah is basically bringing the third group coming from the Persians being captured, coming back to Jerusalem. So as we saw in Ezra, the temple was built. Huge piece for the people of Jerusalem, but they have a little bit of a problem. They got the temple rebuilt, but they didn't got the walls rebuilt.
Yeah.
So the walls are in crumbles. There's none left, and Nehemiah is basically like, we got to build this wall back up. And we'll talk a little bit later. The verse that we're going to read is we're going to see Nehemiah's prayer to God about the wall, and that's a good piece. Obviously, we'll look at that. But then you see Nehemiah have awesome just skills, I would assume only by God,
right,
to be able to organize in a way that they're able to rebuild this wall. And you see, this family on this part of the wall. I mean, you see so much organization in this book. And a person who, owns a business or, owns a company would obviously, I would assume, relate to this. You're a supervisor, right?
Yeah. So, with this, you find in good leadership, what makes them good leaders? Well, they have to be credible. If Nehemiah here was doing things for his own gain, the people would realize it.
Yeah.
When you're working for God, it's completely different. And, you get people to buy into what you're trying to do, and you give them the reason, the why behind it. It makes, leadership a lot easier instead of the do as I say, no questions asked, or because I said so approach versus here's the reason why we have to rebuild this wall. Here's the reason why we're doing these things for God. Here's the reason why. It makes leadership much more desirable, and it's much more relatable to the people. And he's not just a do as I say boss. He's in there working with them, which also builds credibility.
Absolutely.
In that sense.
And when you think about the wall and what it symbolized God's protection. So not only is it just, to protect them from their enemies, but it was just a sense of God's protection for Jerusalem and the people. And Nehemiah understood that. He knew that. He knew how important it was, not only for protection, but just a sense to also just relieve maybe the fear on the people of Jerusalem, coming back to basically just wide open, nothing to stop any enemy from coming in and taking them. So Nehemiah's like, we're going to build this wall. Well, as soon as things are going good, like anything in life, opposition comes.
It does.
So we see like 3 instances of opposition happen in the book of Nehemiah. And I don't know all the specifics, obviously, but there's definitely people who wanted to come in and harm the people who were jealous, all those types of things that were happening. So Nehemiah kind of gives an interesting thing. He doesn't just have warriors and then builders. He makes the builders warriors. And you see, they were building with one hand and fighting with the other. And that's just a cool picture that it's just this sense of unity that you see in the people, that they all want to accomplish this one thing.
And I think, with the building of the wall, it symbolizes that rekindling of the relationship with God. Because these people were captured for a reason. It's for disobedience and doing what, serving foreign gods and doing what they wanted. So for them to come back to Jerusalem and to say, hey, we want to rededicate ourselves to the building of this wall, and symbolizes we want to be under that protection of God again. We don't want to go back into captivity.
Exactly.
So they're all on the same page, so to speak, in what the goal of this wall and what the purpose of the wall is. So.
And exactly. So when the wall's built, they dedicate basically themselves and dedicate to the building of this wall to God, and they dedicate themselves to God. And you see, Ezra comes on the scene. We see it in the book of Nehemiah also, Ezra. So Ezra comes in and he reads the law. So the law is read and the people then dedicate their lives. And then at the end of the book, basically what I'll say is Nehemiah asks God to have favor on him. basically, Lord, see what I've done. It's all for you.
Yeah.
Have favor on me.
Yeah.
Give me grace, give me mercy, give me blessings that only you can give.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful piece. But let's read our passage.
Sure. It'll be Nehemiah chapter 1. We'll be reading verses 3 through 11. And in verse 3 it says, "And they said to me, the survivors who are left from the captivity in the province are there in great distress and reproach. The wall of Jerusalem is also broken down, and its gates are burned with fire. So it was when I heard these words that I sat down and wept and mourned for many days. I was fasting and praying before the God of heaven. And I said, I pray, Lord, God of heaven, O great and awesome God, you who keep your covenant and mercy with those who love you and observe your commandments. Please let your ear be attentive and your eyes be open, that you may hear the prayer of your servant, which I pray before you now, day and night, for the children of Israel, your servants, and confess the sins of the children of Israel, which we have sinned against you. Both my father's house and I have sinned." Verse 7, "We have acted very corruptly against you, and have not kept the commandments, the statutes, nor the ordinances which you commanded your servant Moses. Remember, I pray, the word that you commanded your servant Moses, saying, If you are unfaithful, I will scatter you among the nations. But if you return to me and keep my commandments and do them, though some of you were cast out to the farthest parts of the heavens, yet I will gather them from there and bring them to the place which I have chosen as dwelling for my name." Verse 10, "Now these are your servants and your people, whom you have redeemed your great power and by your strong hand. O Lord, I pray, please let your ear be attentive to the prayer of your servant and the prayer of your servants who desire to fear your name. And let your servant prosper this day, I pray, and grant him mercy in the sight of this man. For I was the king's cupbearer."
Mm-hmm. So what do we think?
He means business.
Yeah.
He's reaching out to God. One, he's admitting that, hey, my dad, my generations, myself have sinned before you. And I think it's interesting and important that he asks him twice to hear him. Mm-hmm. He's saying, this is not just lip service that I'm doing to you. He's saying, Lord, I really want you to hear what I have to say. So much so, I'll say it again, just in case you missed it the first time. And you can see the heart of this man is a heart that longs after God, that wants to right his wrongs, wants to ask for forgiveness, not only for him, but for all of the children of Israel that were following after him and, following God. And he's saying, I want, basically, let us have a redo. We want to start over. And if you hear us, Lord, you'll pull us back together to follow you. He says, you've casted the folks who hadn't been listening to you for the farthest parts of the heavens. Only you can bring them back to you. And that's what he's asking. Lord, make us a great nation again. Make us a great people again. Make us a people that long for obedience and service to the Lord. And this book, I don't know how many years ago it was written, but it's the same today. Yeah. God can still do these things. We just, got out of service. A guy rededicated his life to Christ. I don't know how. I met the guy once. Don't know how far he went. Don't know how long he's been wandering. Don't know how long he's been pushing God's hand away. But today he said, enough is enough. I'm done with it. Yeah. Nehemiah is saying the same thing. Lord, today enough is enough. We know what we've done against you. Thank God his word tells us, in the previous books. But just as this guy was ready to get it right, Nehemiah is saying, we as a people are here before you today saying we want to get it right. Yeah. And it's a great picture and it's a great prayer. Yeah. And I think we ought to be more like this when we admit I think sometimes we're slow to admit that it's us. And we ask God, well, why am I in captivity still? Why didn't I get it right? And our hearts are the purpose behind our ask is not holy. It's selfish. Yeah. And I think we can stay in captivity a little bit longer than necessary, but God is preparing the whole way for us to come back to him, and you hope and you pray that he does. And so that's what Nehemiah is doing here. Yeah.
And you see in the book of Ezra and the book of Nehemiah here that to be a good leader, you have to be a man or a woman of prayer. You have to pray. You have to be serious, like what you're saying. It's him saying, "Hear me, Lord. Hear me, Lord." You have to be serious about prayer, and it can't be lip service. It can't be help me this day. No, those are good to say. When you get up in the morning. If you mean them. If you don't mean them, they're not good for anything, anyways. But a leader really gets down in their prayer. They dig deep. They get specific. They lay it all out. That's why I like when the beginning says, "I wept." He's laying it all out before God. And another thing that's part of that, both of them were like this, is they revered the Lord. They had reverence for the Lord because they understood His power. They understood how holy He was. They understood who He was, and they wanted to give reverence to Him because He was the only one that could help them build the wall. The people, it's awesome, they came together, all that, but they didn't get it done without God.
That's right, absolutely.
They got it done with God because they wouldn't have been able to get it done without God. And you see this opposition from this enemy. Is they were afraid when the wall was built. They were terrified when the wall was completed. Why? And it says because they knew the Lord had helped them build the wall.
And you look back and you say, okay, what did that wall represent before it was torn down? The same thing as it represented as it was going back up. So they knew what they were up against, and they quit before they even got into it. They said, yeah, we know this. Our ancestors, our fathers told us what this is about. We don't want any part of this wall because... who's behind it?
Yeah, absolutely. So Phil, give us your final thought about this book of Nehemiah.
Whether you're in leadership or you're a lowly worker building a wall, do it for the Lord. Do everything you do for the Lord. Trust your leaders. Trust your pastor. Pray for them, and maybe one day, you'll transition from that worker, and you'll be in leadership, and you'll be in charge of people. And be a prayer. Just like Nehemiah, because it does work.
Yeah, amen. So this has been a look through the Bible. Tune in next week where we look at the book of Esther. That's a great book. Fun fact, only book that doesn't mention God.
That's what I hear.
Yeah, fun fact. So if you liked this episode, you can like and subscribe. You can share it with a friend. That would be a blessing to us. Again, we thank you for supporting us, all the things that you do.
Have a great day.
Yeah, have a great day. Have a great day.